What is happening, everyone? I'm Gareth, the Master 974, back again today, and welcome to another Valve source code tutorial follow-up video. And today I'm going to be taking a look at the full holster sequence video that I did, and pointing out and fixing some issues that exist with that feature. So just going to name the issues that I know of and going to be fixing in this video, and in no particular order. Some of the things that happen are that the gravity gun's effects are still active even though the gravity gun isn't the active weapon. This is noticeable when using Impulse 101, and I do need to give a thank you to Immortal Glitchy and anybody else who pointed this out to me. There's another issue that happens when you perform an attack when throwing a physics prop. So for example, when you left mouse click and try to throw a prop, you'll actually end up shooting a gun or something instead, which is not something you want. And it also seems like there's some glitchy reload stuff that happens when you switch weapons. So that's something I'm going to get into as well. You'll probably see in the video right now what I'm talking about. It's not something that you would want. And there's also an issue where the view model disappears when you repeatedly grab or drop a physics prop. So I'll show that off as well. The gun can still be used, it's just that the view model disappears. And it can lead to game crashes if you've structured your code in such a way that expects the view model to be active, but when it's disappeared it's not active and can lead to null pointers and game crashes. So you obviously don't want that either. I believe this disappearing view model thing can also happen when switching weapons when going through a level transition. I'll try my best to show that off in the video as well if I can. Anyway, those are all the issues that I were made aware of and will try to fix in this video. So the first thing I'm going to get to is stopping the player from performing an attack when they have a held physics prop. So what you want to do is actually go to weaponphyscannon.cpp, which is actually the file that contains the code that is responsible for giving players the opportunity to grab and throw physics props in the first place. It's actually the C player grab controller, so that is just going to be defined down here somewhere. The C player pickup controller, and what you want to do is go to the init function, and at the very bottom of the init function you want to add m_p player arrow m_fl next attack equals FLT max. Now if you hover over what FLT max actually is, it's 3.402823466 times 10 to the power 38, which is a very long time. But what this effectively does is it makes the player's next attack time infinite. So when they do a left click or a right click to do a primary or secondary attack respectively, when holding onto a physics prop, then that attack doesn't happen. Now one thing that is important to note is that this doesn't actually stop the player from attacking. As soon as the object is thrown, the ability to use weapons is restored without any issues. Now the only thing that I found through testing that could be potentially deemed as an issue is that the Crossbow's zoom feature can be used immediately when actually using a secondary attack to drop a physics prop. Alright everyone, I'm just going to make a little intermission here because I did actually figure out how to stop the crossbow zooming from happening when dropping a physics prop. So as it turns out, what you want to do is go to item busy frame, and what you want to do is add if get activity is exactly equal to act_vm holster, or get activity is exactly equal to act_vm draw, then return, and then do check zoom toggle after that. But also in item post frame, you want to add if get activity is exactly equal to act_vm holster, then return. So I believe this is what's responsible for stopping the crossbow zooming when dropping a physics prop, because you'd think it's act_vm draw, but it's actually act_vm holster that's the animation that plays. But what I said up here with item busy frame actually stops the zooming from happening when deploying or holstering the crossbow. So if the activity is the holster, which means you're switching away from the crossbow, then you shouldn't be able to attack or zoom. Or if the activity is the drawing activity, which means you're switching to the crossbow, then you shouldn't be allowed to draw or fire until the weapon has fully drawn. Now there was something that I completely forgot about when making this video, which was a consideration for Source 2013 multiplayer mods, because I said there that there was an issue where if you switch weapons, that you could attack during the weapon switch process. So for example, with the pistol or the gravity gun or the stun stick or the crowbar or even the crossbow, the shotgun, the AR2, whatever the case might be, that if you switched using the full holster sequence, then you could spam primary attack, for example, and still do an attack when you're supposed to be switching weapons. Now, so as it turns out, I did actually figure out a way that you could get this to work. So for example, I'm just going to go through a bunch of codes that I've just co-opted from Half-Life 2 multiplayer just to show you what you can do. So for example, with the AR2 in item post frame at the very top of the function, you can just check to see if the activity is ActiveM holster and then return, so don't do any of the other codes if the weapon is holstering. For base bludgeon weapon, which covers the stun stick and the crowbar, again near the top of the function, item post frame, if get activity is ActiveM holster, then return. For C base HL2 MP combat weapon, I actually decided to add the item post frame function to the class declaration and also expand item post frame as follows. Just adding that if get activity is exactly equal to ActiveM holster, then return. The shotgun, because that overloads item post frame, again near the top of the function, add if get activity is exactly equal to ActiveM holster, then return. The fizz cannon, again, item post frame, top of the function, if get activity is exactly equal to ActiveM holster, then return. And yeah, that's pretty much all you'd really need to do, because the Source 2013 multiplayer code works a little bit differently than Source 2013 single player. As far as I know, you can't perform this in Source 2013 single player mods. I tried as hard as I could and I couldn't seem to get this to happen, but it's fairly easy to do in Source 2013 multiplayer mods, and so by making these code changes, you should no longer have the ability to sort of spam attacks when switching between weapons and then those attacks actually happen. So I thought I'd just point this out to you as a bit of a fix that I wasn't anticipating including in this follow-up video. Now back to some of the other fixes. Okay, so the next issue I'm going to get to is stopping the gravity gun's effects from happening when using something like Impulse 101 and switching between weapons. Now the main reason why this issue happens is because functions like drop or holster don't actually get called when you actually use Impulse 101, and so the force drop function doesn't get called, which means the gravity gun's effects don't get destroyed and they linger between other weapons. However, what you can do is in the class declaration for C weapon fizz cannon, you can add a function called ball reload or switch weapons, and somewhere in the gravity gun code, it doesn't really matter where you actually add this, but you want to add a ball C weapon fizz cannon : reload or switch weapons passing through void inputs, and in this function you want to add force drop and then return base class : reload or switch weapons. So as I just said, the holster function, for example, doesn't do force drop because that doesn't get called, and the drop function, which also calls force drop, doesn't get called when Impulse 101 is called, which means the gravity gun's effects don't get destroyed. However, the reload or switch weapons function does get called when using Impulse 101, and that way by calling force drop here, you actually destroy the gravity gun's effects, so you should no longer see the gravity gun's effects when using Impulse 101 and switching between the weapons. Now this is a bit different than what I was anticipating. I was expecting the client code to have something to do with this issue, but apparently it's all server-side stuff. So that actually makes my life a little bit easier. So the next thing I'm going to fix is the view models disappearing when repeatedly grabbing or dropping physics props or switching weapons when going through a level transition. Now one thing that I discovered with this is that you don't actually have to repeatedly spam dropping and grabbing a physics prop. You just need to grab a physics prop once, drop it, grab it again, and then as the weapon does a holster animation once it completes, it automatically drops the held physics object, and then you get the disappearing view model issue. Now, the fix that I found for this is that you want to go to the holster function in base combat weapon shared.cpp, and with this if statement about if FL sequence duration, you just want to comment out this else statement that contains the set context think line, because this line is what's responsible for hiding the weapon when the holster's animation is completed. Now you want to at least keep this initial part because, as the comment says, If we don't have a holster animation, then hide immediately to avoid timing issues. So if you comment this part of the if statement out, then what you'll find is that you just won't be able to pick up physics props at all. Like, you can try until the cows come home and it's just not going to work. But for this else statement, it stops the issue where the view model disappears. So you can try it again, as I said, where if you pick up an object, drop it, and then pick it back up again, wait for the holster animation to finish, the physics prop should drop, and then you should be able to see the deploy animation for the weapon play out as it's supposed to. Now, I know one thing that someone might be bringing up in the comments is, how do you stop the physics prop from being dropped in the first place? That I don't know and I haven't investigated, but if you have any ideas about how to stop that from happening, then you can always let me know in the comment section down below. I believe this code change should also stop game crashes and also the issue that I talked about where view models disappear through level transitions as well, so you can mess around with that and let me know if it works. Now, the last thing I'm going to get to is this glitchy reload thing. Now, one thing that I noticed is that in normal Half-Life 2, there's an auto reloading feature. So there's one thing that you might want to do to make that not happen, to make this a bit more pronounced. So if you want to stop auto reloading, you want to go to base HL combat weapons shared.cpp. And at the top of the file, you should see the item holster frame function. And inside of this if statement about if the current time minus the holster time is greater than the auto reload time, then it finishes the reload, but you can comment out the finish reload line. That way it doesn't actually cause weapons to auto reload. Or if you don't want to disable the feature, but you want to see it in action, then you can always increase the auto reload time from 3 to something like, I don't know, 20, 30, a million, whatever you want. And then you should be able to see this in action. And if you go down the route of changing this convar time, you don't have to worry about something like the shotgun, which overloads the item holster frame function. But if you want to remove auto reloading, then you need to go to the shotgun code, weaponshotgun.cpp, go to the item holster frame function, and then essentially get rid of this if statements that automatically fills the shotgun's clip when the auto reload time has elapsed. But if you want to stop this from happening, you want to go to base combat weapons shared.cpp and you want to go to the default deploy function. Now, what you want to do here is as follows. So what you want to do is get rid of the bool show weapon equals in front of the g_show weapon dot set show weapon line, as you can see here. But instead of doing if !show weapon, what you want to do is if f class name is of this, and then in speech marks weapon_phys cannon, then do reload or switch weapons. Now, the reason for this change is because I noticed during testing that the gravity gun's effects were still happening on other weapons, even though I added this reload or switch weapons function to weapon_phys_cannon.cpp. And the reason why that was happening was because this reload or switch weapons line wasn't getting called in the default deploy function in base combat weapons shared.cpp. So basically what we're doing is checking to see if the class name of the C-base combat weapon in question is the phys gun or the phys cannon or the gravity gun, and in that case you call reload or switch weapons, which then stops the gravity gun's effects because force drop is getting called in that case. So I just wanted to point this out because this is what you want to do. In the initial recording, I said to delete this in its entirety, but you don't want to do that. You want to do this instead. And that should stop this glitchy reload thing from happening. So if I were to save and compile the code, go into a game, then all of the issues that I talked about, from the glitchy reload to the disappearing view models to the attacks when throwing a physics object, and even the gravity gun's effect being present on weapons when they're not supposed to be present, all of that should be resolved at this point. I haven't noticed any glaring issues or anything that's broken from making these changes, but if there is anything that happens or shouldn't happen as a result of these code changes, then you can let me know in the comments section down below. And so yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say in this video. I hope you found it helpful. I'm trying a live recording style where I'm actually recording the audio through OBS and I'm going to be chopping up the video after the fact. while also showing some gameplay which highlights the issues and the fixes that I've been talking about in this video. So yeah, that's all I have to say for this follow-up video. Take care out there, peace out, see you later. Hopefully the next video won't take a million years to come out. So yeah, have a great day, and I hope you'll check out some of my other videos. See you next time.